Hey everybody, how are you doing? Doing my stretches. This is my never mind. Today it is February 23rd. We're looking at a Monday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Return of the King. My name's Eric. We are doing a redo today. I'll get into that in a little bit. If you're new here, please subscribe. There's a lot of great content. I think a lot of you will enjoy it. Most of my subscribers enjoy it. That's good. Good to know. Most of my subscribers enjoy it. Always like the videos if you would. It helps the algorithm. Hit the thumbs up button as much as you can. Um, Share if you would. That's up to you, though. I mean, everything's up to you, but share if you would. Comment. I always like to see your comments. But today we're doing a redo. I did a redo last night. I call it a revised version of what I done. Hello, Victor. How you doing, bud? Good to see both of you. Um, Guys, today, as I said, it's a redo. So hello, Vanessa. How are you? Good to see you here, girl. Glad to have you. Vanessa, would you be interested in being a moderator? If you'd be interested in being a moderator, Vanessa, let me know. Hit the like button and we'll get started. Hit the thumbs up button. Oh, it's all right. No big deal. No big deal. I'll just, I've got moderators right now, so I'll just, keep an eye out for someone else. Victor and Andrea are both moderators. Okay, so guys, let's come in where I left off yesterday, right around the time of high school. I was getting into high school. This is about my path and God. It's kind of like a testimony. So high school was a very bad time for me especially compared to my elementary years and my junior high years. High school was not a good time for me. That's when my problems started in earnest, as they say. Um, my I first started noticing, as I told you, probably back as early back as maybe late 83, 84. But I mean, it was just no big deal. It was just like, kind of like having a bad dream. That's how it seemed in the beginning, right before it really started getting bad. Um, but I'll tell you right now, it definitely really had an effect on my, one sec, I hear my friends. It really had a strong effect on my social skills and my self-esteem, my self-confidence. I didn't want to go back to school. I never liked going back to school, but at the same time, anytime you entered a new phase of your education or a new phase of anything, new phase of your employment, it's always kind of exciting. Someone says, good example is, let's say you were in the warehouse at a certain company, all of a sudden you're going into the office. This say they promote you. So it's always going to be exciting, kind of exciting. Same thing with me. I was kind of excited. I was like, okay, let's see how freshman year is. But as I told you the last time, my freshman year was turbulent because my older brother went into the army. So I kind of felt like I was a little bit alone because my younger siblings were very young at the time. When I went into high school, my one brother was, he'd have been not even 6 yet. My other brother was not even 4 yet. So they're 5 and 3. So that really it was tough. All the things happening at the same time. But I knew I'm not shocked. I look back in retrospect that I wasn't popular. It doesn't. Hello, my church is your church. Welcome, 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 welcome. I'm very pleased to have you here. Hit the like button if you would, and subscribe would be even better if you would. I'd appreciate it. This channel is about Christian content. Right now, I'm kind of giving my testimony, but I'm kind of also veering off into just my life in general. But we have a lot of Christian. Look at all the videos, everyone, and watch them in their entirety. So either way, um, my freshman year was very turbulent because that's when my problems started big time. Uh, the first month of high school was typical, kind of crazy, kind of hectic and chaotic. But I would say I found my way around. And the next time, the next year was a very turbulent for me, very turbulent, because I was dealing with my problem. My parents wanted to know what was going on with me. I think they thought I was on drugs. And of course, that would have been a good guess. Let's be honest with ourselves. I'd have been what, my freshman year. That a lot of times kids back then would start around that time, like junior high. Oh, okay, that's good. Thank you. My church is your church. Um, so I didn't go out for any sports my freshman year. I remember I didn't go out for any sports, but um, I had a small group of friends, and the thing that really bothered me is the friends that I had. I started getting more distant from the one. I mean, at first it wasn't so bad. My freshman, sophomore years, my one friend named Mike. I also had a friend named Don. I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and it wasn't because I couldn't make friends. I was very picky about the friends I hung out with. I didn't just want to hang out with anyone, and I knew I wasn't part of the preppy athletic type people, even though I could be athletic. So I didn't go out for my freshman year, though. My sophomore years were a lot of going to the hospital and stuff. I remember getting an MRE or MRI. I mean, they put stuff on your head and stuff because my parents were really concerned about me. And it was not fun going to school because people would sit there and they'd start watching you, seeing if you were going to make a movement or whatever. And so it was very uncomfortable to go to school. And as I told people, this is how bad it got for me, guys. I started eventually feeling like I was a Jew going into Nazi Germany or Nazi Europe back in the 30s. That's how uncomfortable it got for me. I hated it. Into the point where I hated my school. I didn't like hardly any of my classmates. I didn't like the people. Oddly enough, I couldn't stand the classes that were my class, 89, the class above me, 88, and the class behind me, 1990. I didn't like hardly any of them classes. I had some friends, and I used to hang out with them. And this is right around the time my late freshman, early sophomore year was when I started hanging out. Yeah, it was terrible. When I started hanging out with this new group of people, their names were, it was this one kid. He was a big, heavy set kid, really big, really big. His name was Lonnie. I started hanging out with him, and I feel bad about saying this because, he's dead now. But he was a big kid, and we started hanging out, got friends. And when I look back in retrospect, I shouldn't have been hanging out with him. He wasn't a Christian. And this is exactly what I talk about when I said in the one video, watch who you hang out with. All right. You never know what path they're going to lead you down. And they might not even be purposely trying to lead you down a bad path, but it's just the way they were raised versus the way you were raised. But I liked hanging out with them. And in a way, I sit there and think back to myself. I remember when we really started hanging out, it was probably I believe it was my sophomore year. And I remember him calling early one morning. And I had never been to a rock concert other than in school. But it was 1987, I believe. Chewy, stop it. It was 1987, I believe. And he called me one morning early in the day, right before I went to school. We were waiting for the bus and everything like that. And he said, hey, you want to go to a concert tonight? And I was like, think about it. That's what you do when you're a kid that age. You do things, you hang out. So he said, you want to go to Iron Maiden? Iron Maiden's playing. And I'm like, at that time, I knew about Iron Maiden. I actually liked one of their songs called Wasted Years. I liked them a little bit, but I thought, so I thought, what the heck? I went out and asked my mom. She was up at that time. It was like probably 7:00 or something like that, 7:30. I don't know. And I went out there and asked her, and I said, can I go to a concert? And she said, well, who is it and how much do you need? And I told her, of course, everything. And, she said, basically said it was all right to go. She wasn't thinking, because like I said, my parents were Christians, but they weren't devout. It's amazing it's amazing how important, quote unquote, being devout is. What being devout means is just being a steadfast Christian where you're living the word. You're not just talking about it. You're not just going to church. You're living the word. Because if she would have did probably doing what she should have been doing. She should have said, "Well, who are they?" And then she'd have investigated, said, "Let's find out who they are." And she'd have found out it was a heavy metal group. She probably, if she was a Christian, she should have said, "No, sorry, you can't go." Now I know I'd have been upset because I wanted to, there was a new friend I was meeting. I wanted to hang out, and I like rock music. I wasn't really into Iron Maiden. Of course, later on, it got to the point where I did like Iron Maiden quite a bit. I still kind of like them. That was 87 though. And it was the spring of 87. And one thing that's kind of weird with me, with my experiences and school and stuff, was that I noticed that my freshman, sophomore, junior falls of each year, my freshman year, fall, my sophomore year in fall, my junior year in fall, all of them were bad. They were all bad. It was weird. My senior year, the fall time, like September, October, wasn't that bad. It was actually all right. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. And on the contrary, on the opposite, on the flip side of the coin, my sophomore, junior, and senior springs, which would have been 87, 88, 89 of spring, they were all great, which is weird, So it's like, 85, 86, 87 falls, bad. 87, 88, 89 springs, very good. Something about spring to me, like right now we're in February, and when it gets springtime, it's always exciting because you see new life, you see blooms, you see the trees getting green. I have people in my family that are into fall. My dad and my mom are both really like fall. I would say I hate fall, but obviously fall's got negative connotations to it because I would always go into have to start school. So all I know is my sophomore year was really turbulent because most of it was, but in the spring it got better. Like I said, for some reason the spring, and I know basically why, it was mainly because spring was coming around and I was excited. I was happy. I went through the years, and I remember my junior year, I went out for football. I don't see, it's weird, guys. I can't quite remember my sophomore, my junior, I know senior year, I did not go out for football. I know I didn't. My freshman year, I'm pretty sure I didn't go out for football either. The year I can't remember if I went out was my sophomore year. Junior year, I know I went out for football. But of course, guys, I'll tell you, there's nothing worse than going through a problem. You're going through your problem, you're going through puberty, and you're also around people that you don't like. And you're in a setting which is, even though I'm built for football, back then I was, of course, a lot smaller. Yeah, it's my love affair with pop really came into play at this time, because I know it sounds crazy, guys, and you're going to be like, really? You would not believe how much, knowing that I had money to get a pop late at night or in the daytime, anytime I was able to get a pop, it was amazing how much it would make me feel better. It was like liquid happiness for me, because as I said before, I believe my early on in life, we were young kids in the 70s and early 80s and stuff, we didn't get a lot of pop. We got very little pop. We get it maybe around the holidays, maybe at a picnic. We didn't get a lot of pop. We had a lot of Kool-Aid and Flavor Aid and stuff. So whenever I get money at Christmas time, or like on birthday, if I got money then, me and my brother would almost always take it. We'd go over. Remember, I told you about in the first one, what we would do at night? We would watch comedy classics. We'd get a 2-liter, or my brother started getting me to get 8-pack bottles. And you're probably thinking, why is this? You're really going on about pop. It's how much pop means. Look, but I mean, when you don't get a lot of something when you're younger, when you get older, it starts meaning a lot to you. You start cherishing it. And I always drink my pop slow. When I went out for football, it was at another junction in my life. It was the fall of my junior year, which would have been 1987. And fall was horrible. I ended up going to a trade school in Pena County. And my problem had really started getting bad. I felt like I was a stranger in a strange land. And here's the thing: as much as I hated Northwood, here's the thing that's crazy: I hated Penta even more. It was a trade school. I'm a very difficult person to get to know. I'm a very difficult person. Yeah, exactly. My church. My church. Did you used to have a different name? You because you said you're a subscriber. I don't know if I've ever seen you unless you had a different name. Either way, but when I went to the trade school, Pinna County, it was worse than high school. I mean, and I overall looked at myself. I'm a very complex person because I didn't fit in. Hmm. Okay, thanks. I was just curious. It seemed like I thought maybe you changed your name because you seem like you really know your way around the channel, which is good. I'm glad. But so my problem started, and I remember, guys, this is how lonely things were for me. And I'm not trying to get you to feel sorry for me. I'm just letting you know. At lunchtime, I would, instead of getting my meal, I would usually just get like 6 cookies or something like that, or 7 cookies, and I'd take them by myself. I wouldn't stay in the lunchroom because I didn't sit with anyone. I was, pretty much by myself, a loner, and I would go to a bathroom or something somewhere else, and I would eat by myself. Um, and a lot of times also, I wouldn't even have any money when it came lunchtime because when I was at this, I ended up started out in horticulture, which I didn't realize what it was at the time. I chose it as an elective, and I thought, wait a minute, this is not for me. Horticulture is too. So I ended up going to ag mechanics. That was a mistake too. Ag mechanics was not for me. I was not an agricultural type guy. I just wanted to get out of horticulture. And when we were in lab in ag mechanics, there was these machines. One was an M&M machine and one was another machine. And they would be 10 cents. You put them in, you get a handful of M&Ms. A lot of times I would end up spending most of my money on these M&Ms. And by the time lunchtime came around, a lot of times I didn't have any money. And that might have been one of the reasons I started getting cookies, because maybe cookies I could get, maybe I had like 50 cents left. I could get a few cookies. But all I know is that period sucked. And eventually they started, it ended up being a long story short. Yeah, I know, it was nice. Long story short, I ended up having a meeting with the people at Pinna County, and they didn't want me there. They didn't want me there. They thought I was trouble, which I didn't do much of anything. So they knew something was wrong with what I was dealing with. They could tell my attitude and stuff. You silly cat. I swear, he just won't. I'll try and hold him for a little bit for a while. He wants to see everyone anyways. You guys probably want to see him. But I tried to, eventually they came to the conclusion that they didn't want me there. So hey, Alana, how you doing? So eventually it came to the conclusion they didn't know what to do with me. So I wasn't going to school at all for a while. So finally our student, student advisor, whatever, our counselor came to the house, and they started deciding, well, what do we got? What are we going to do with you? What are we going to do with you? Where are you going to go? And then eventually it came to the conclusion that I would just go back to Northwood. Now, you might be shocked to know this, but I actually looked at going back to Northwood as a saving grace. That's how much I hated Pinna. And I looked at Northwood as salvation, shockingly. As much as I hated Northwood was so much better than Pinna County. So I remember going back, and I was relieved. I was out of Pinna County, and it would have been the fall of my junior year, and they didn't have a schedule for me yet. So I ended up having to get a schedule. And what's wrong, buddy? Huh? But they ended up having a schedule for me. So my junior year ended up being not too bad, because I kind of flew under the radar. When I went to Pinna County, people kind of forgot about me and my situation. Okay, go ahead. Now they forgot about my situation. So I kind of flew back under the radar when I came back to my school. So I went through the rest of school and everything. The summers of my sophomore and my junior summer were awesome. I loved summertime. I had no problem. It was always at school time, because it's bad enough, that you have a problem, but when you go to school, it compounds it. It makes it worse. So summertime, I always looked at as summertime as my time. This is my time. The popular kids, they had the school year. That was their time. This was my time. It's kind of like Have you ever seen the Goonies? Anyone ever seen the Goonies, the movie? It's what Sean Astin's character says when they're in the bottom of this well. They're in the bottom of a well. These popular kids are um, at the top of this well. They didn't realize that they were down there underneath this well. And they were starting this little saga quest they were going on to find One-Eyed Willie. You know how it is. They were starting to get tired of the quest. Some of them were, and they're like, let's just go back up. And then Sean Astin's character says, no, no, no. He said, you don't understand. This is the last, because they were trying to save their home from some rich investment guy. And he said, Sean Astin, I still remember his what he was trying to say, because the Goonies were, that's sad, Andrea, but we'll continue to pray for you. We're not going to give up. But he said Sean Astin looked around all the people that were in the bottom of this well, because there was a bunch of coins and stuff. And he said, up there, it's their time. It's their time up there. Down here, it's our time. It's our time. He looked around everyone, because I don't think any of them were very popular, other than the one girl, Carrie Green, the actress Carrie Green. I think she was kind of popular. Her character was, but everyone else wasn't real popular. So this was their time. That's how I felt about summertime. My sophomore year, I did a lot of dating outside, because I didn't hardly date any girls in my school at all. In high school, I didn't, but I dated a lot of girls from other schools. So then that told me that you're not the problem, Eric, because if you were the problem, you wouldn't have any friends or girlfriends outside of your school. But I had lots of friends from other schools. I had girlfriends from other schools. That's where all my girlfriends came from, other schools, either Genoa, Woodmore, Stritch, Waite, Clay, something like that. They came from them schools, and friends and girlfriends and stuff. So I knew I wasn't the problem. But sometimes, guys, certain times in your life are literally magical. And that's the way I looked at the spring of 87, 88, 89, and the summers of 87 and 88. 89, the spring, the summer was good, but it was really adventurous in a kind of a hectic, crazy way. I'll get to that in a little bit here. So I finally got into my senior year. I still remember my junior summer going into my senior year. I still remember going to get my pictures taken at Woodard Photography. You know, it's funny because I actually fancy myself as an amateur writer. I've gotten probably like 3 or 4 novels that I started that I never completed. One of them's got 2 chapters done. One of them's got 1 chapter. I just never, I'm my own worst critic. I always feel like, should I be writing that? Should I not be writing that? So either way, my junior summer was very fun, very exciting. So I got it. My senior year was not that bad, because there was only 2 classes I was dealing with instead of 3. There was my class and the class below me. The class above me, they were gone. And I was a senior. So I kind of felt a little bit of clout, even though I was not popular. I was a pariah. I wasn't some complete dork or whatever. I was just a pariah, because I had my problem. When you all know, whenever you get a diagnosis, if you're going to a social function, a school or whatever, you're definitely going to be under a microscope. So either way, my senior year starts winding down and everything like that. And I'll be honest with you guys, I barely graduated. I told people this. I didn't know if I was going to graduate till literally about my last day of high school. That's how much of a screw off I was. And it wasn't because I was stupid, but I almost never did my homework. Very rarely did I do my homework. When I did, it was rushed. And so I still remember my last day of school. I basically had like 17 and a half credits. I needed 1 more half credit to graduate. We needed 18 credits to graduate. I ended up having to take a correspondence course in my senior year because I screwed around so much that I had to take a correspondence course to make up a half a credit. So I had 17 and a half credits. I barely passed my correspondence course. It was about automotive, but I had to take something to get a half credit. And my guidance counselor basically recommended it. So I still remember I was in the cafeteria taking a test, a makeup test. And I remember the woman teacher, she happened to be, I was in the cafeteria by myself because there was no class, there was no lunch going on at the time. I was taking a makeup test, and she starts walking by, this teacher, and everything was hinging on her grade. I told myself, if I don't pass If I end up failing, I am not going back to school. I will go to summer school if I have to. I'm not going back to school. So she's walking as I'm taking this test, and I'm starting looking at her. I remember just looking at her like this. I just kind of was writing down, kind of looking at her. She starts looking at me. And she, all of a sudden, as she got closer and closer, kind of walking by, she just kind of looked at me and she goes, kind of gave me the nod of approval, like, yeah, you passed. And I was like, oh man, you want to talk about a load of bricks off of my shoulder? I was so happy. Now, I didn't have a graduation. I had a very little graduation party. And here was what happened in the day of my graduation. I still remember when we got out of school, because, everyone knows seniors always get let out like a week, 2 weeks early. Yeah. Oh, wow. I was right. They usually get out a week or 2 weeks early. So didn't matter to me if I was popular or not. When that bell left, when they let us out, the seniors, oh man, the halls were screaming, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was happy as pigs and pigs and manure. I was so happy. I remember getting a ride with my buddy, a good buddy of mine named Don. He was in my class, but he gave me a ride, and I'm pretty sure I ended up saying, I'll buy a drink for both of us. And I'm pretty sure I ended up having money that day somehow. I bought a drink for both of us. And I said, I'm walking the rest of the way home. And so I did. But either way, my graduation wasn't very happy because when I started, you had to go back to school the next day because you had to, but all your classes were pretty much done. It was all about rehearsing for prom or rehearsing for graduation. So I was like, I go in there and they start rehearsing and we're in the auditorium and they're telling everyone, okay, yada, yada, yada. I ended up having to sit next to, because a lot of people at the end, like in the W's and other people, there were certain people that weren't going to graduate for one reason or the other. I ended up having to sit between two dickheads that I did not like. I'm sorry. I shouldn't talk like that. I ended up having to sit next to two people I did not care for too much, especially one of them. One of them I definitely didn't care for. So they had to fill in the blanks. So all the people at the end of the alphabet, W's and Z's and everything like that. I know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, guys. But I sit between these two guys I didn't like. And I remember one of the times when we were out in the hallway getting ready to file in for the practice for the graduation, someone said something to me off color. I didn't like it. Of course, I didn't say anything because I knew I was a pariah. So either way, I'm up there, and of course, you know how graduations are. Everyone, their name is called. So I'm sitting. Thanks, but their name is called, and I started thinking to myself, when people were going up on stage to practice to get their diploma, yada yada, go like that. I started thinking to myself, you know what? I've seen movies before, and people were saying stuff in my graduation during the practice when someone got up on stage, like, yo, big guy, something like that. And I started thinking to myself, I wonder what they're going to say when I go up on stage. I thought to myself, I thought, I ain't going to go through any kind of degradation. I've already went through enough. So at that moment, I remember saying, I raised my hand when we were thinking, and they said, yeah. I said, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to the bathroom, or I should say, I walked out the auditorium, and I just walked right out. I said, I'm not going to go to my graduation. The hell with it. I mean, I should say, I'm not going to go on stage with my graduation. I walked out of the class. I walked out of the auditorium. I walked out of school. I walked home. I said, the hell with it. My schooling days are done, including everything, practice and everything. So what ended up happening, well, people, they were just jerks is what they were. It's hard to consider them bullies because I can handle myself. But I appreciate your sentiments, Alana. Thank you. But so I thought to myself, you know what? The day of the graduation, I did go, but I didn't have my cap and gown. I didn't have anything. And of course, my parents act like they didn't want to buy me a cap and gown because I didn't strive very hard on my scholastics. So what ended up happening is I ended up going to the auditorium was set up like this. Like, here's the auditorium. We had seats on this side, seats in the middle, typical like a theater. Seats on the middle, seats on this side, seats on that side. Then the stage was up here. I was way in the back. There was like this little cubby hole, like this area in the back, almost like a foyer. And there was like this long cloth bench, but there was a ton of people around. None of my classmates, they would have all been like, getting ready to come in or whatever. And I remember sitting in the back, just waiting. I wanted to watch the graduation. So I felt like I was a little bit part of it. Like, hey, really when it gets down to it, guys, the way I look at it, my graduation, for me to graduate was kind of amazing because I graduated on time and I barely did my homework. So as I said, I knew I wasn't stupid. I hated school. I did not like getting up early. I didn't like my classmates. That's why I ended up quitting junior football when I was in my junior year. Ended up quitting. I could not stand my teammates. I didn't like them. Matter of fact, I always used to fantasize. I would love to go to another school because in my junior year, my dad was possibly going to get transferred to Tip City, which was and I always imagined to myself, if we left this dump and I went to Tip City, I thought to myself, that'd be so great if Tip City would play Northwood and I would be a linebacker for Tip City and I would be into it then. My mind would be into it because I wouldn't dislike my classmates. Either way, getting back to it, sorry. So I remember when I was in that little cubby hole, there's a big crowd. And of course, in each file, my classmates, after the graduation, they started walking out of the auditorium after they got their diplomas. So I'm just sitting there, no one could see me. Like I said, there's tons of people in the back, plus in the auditorium. So I remember getting up and then finally everyone got out of there. And I ended up getting up and this one woman who was I had painted her son. Her son is the one that got me into it because he was the one painting his garage. He didn't want to do it. So she hired one of his friends, which was me. Either way, she was there with another woman. And I remember getting up and they seen me and they said, where were you at? Why did you graduate? I said, yeah, I graduated. I just didn't. I told them the whole story. And then she said, and she knew because every time I painted the garage, when she would pay me, she would always give me a pack of Reese cups. So I'm sitting there, and she said, "I got you a present, a graduation present." She got me a big thing of Reese cups, and so either way, I remember everyone was out of there. People were starting to file out. Some of the people, the families and stuff. So I went up to the stage. I seen the principal up there, and I said, "Hello," and also he looks at me and he says, "Eric," he's like, "Where were you at?" And I said, it's a long story. And he ended up kind of squeezing it out of me. He wanted to know what happened. I told him. He said, you should have said something to me because I had done something about that. And I feel bad because here's a little bit of trivia, not trivia for you. Here's a little bit of a thing. In my junior year, I believe, or my senior years, me and two of my buddies egged his car. I remember it was either homecoming or prom night, and we were out driving around, hanging around. We egged his car, and how friendly. We ended up having to wash and wax his car for a whole week at school as a penitence for what we'd done. So either way, it was really nice of him to do that. He's like, I wanted to shake your hand when I was down there looking up because the stage was like this. And I said, can I get my diploma? He's like, yeah, you sure can, like that. So he said, 1 second, because they must have had the diploma. Well, I know they had the diploma in the office because he went and got it. They didn't have it on stage because they already knew that I wasn't going to go because when I walked out. So he goes back to the office, yada, yada, yada. Gets me my diploma, shakes my hand, and he said, congratulations, whatever like that. And all I know is I ended up going home. I was excited. I ended up talking to my mom and dad about a graduation party. My dad balked at the idea. Oh, no, you didn't at all apply yourself. You don't deserve a party. Of course, I was a little bit upset because I thought, well, I admit I didn't apply myself, but I still did graduate. So, make a long story short, I was able to have a small group of my buddies, the Peltons, that was their name, the ones that were the bad influence. Sometimes I sit there and say the name. I just always associate it with the Woodville Mall because that's the mall we used to always go to because, everyone knows that is the place to be. Either way, so I graduate high school. I remember telling myself when I graduate that school, I'm never looking back. And I didn't. Well, in a way, I didn't. I'll get to that in a little bit. So what ends up happening is that summer was a really turbulent summer. I ended up getting a job at Super America, and it was a gas station. I was just a clerk, whatever. And one of the conditions of this job was I had to mow their lawn. Their lawn was huge. The front wasn't big at all. It was like a little strip out in front of the road. The sides were almost, there's nothing on the sides. The backyard was huge of this gas station. I had to mow it as a condition of my employment. So I remember their mower sucked. It was horrible. It was not even a riding mower. It was one of the push mowers. And I didn't bother me so much. It was a push mower. The fact is, this thing stunk. The handle would go down. So it's like it started bothering my back. So I end up saying, I can't keep doing this. So I remember talking to the boss, and I'm like, I don't want to do the lawn anymore. I want to just be a clerk, And they basically said, that's why you were hired, is to be a clerk and do that. You have to do both. Excuse me. So I ended up quitting that job. Ended up getting a job at a place called Commercial Mowing. We went to the Sun Oil Refinery, and we did the yard work there. I hated that job. I didn't like my employees, my fellow employees, because they were all a close-knit group, and I was Johnny come lately. So, and I had to get up early every day. And oh man, I would come home and I would just pass out. I was so dog tired. And I ended up quitting that job, and me and my dad got into it. He said, because the one day he dropped me off, and all I did is say, yeah. I was always afraid to tell my dad that I quit a job. Always afraid to tell him, especially when I was younger, mainly, not when I got older. But he told me, because he dropped me off that day, and he said, I'm going to pick you up. And or actually, I don't even know if he told me he's going to pick me up. He ended up going to pick me up, and they said, he's not here. He quit. And I'm like, of course, my dad comes home that day, and he says, you quit your job? I was like, no, I didn't want to say it because the way he responded. So I ended up basically, I was like, oh no, he said, well, if you quit your job, I'm either going to kick you out or I'm going to kick your ASS. Excuse my language. So I'm thinking to myself, what do I do now? He probably didn't mean, I don't believe he actually meant it as far as either one of them, but my dad has horrible patience and a bad temper. He did back then, not as much now. But either way, so I think to myself, I'm going to leave. So that very night, I took this backpack. I put a bunch of food in it and some clothes, a change of clothes and everything. And I just took off and left that night. And I ended up going over to my buddy's house, the Peltons. And what was really cool, guys, is really one thing I liked about them was what they'd done the next day. The next day, I didn't know what to do. So I ended up literally at this place called the Andersons. It was at the mall. They had sheds outside because it was summertime and stuff, You could buy a shed. I ended up going into that shed and sleeping at night. So it was kind of funny because it was like, it was serendipity because I didn't expect it. But I thought to myself, this is not exactly safe, but at least it's somewhere to stay where I'm out of the elements if it starts raining, whatever. So I ended up staying in that shed, and I ended up hanging out at the mall the whole next day. And while I was there, my buddies ended up taking the garage of my one buddy's place. Chewy, stop it. Come on, buddy. And they ended up fixing up the garage really nice. I think I might have said this before, guys. So if I said it before, just excuse me. No, stay here. So I ended up going back after because we would always hang out at the mall anyways. We were back and forth to the mall because both their houses were right behind the mall, right beside it. So it was perfect. I ended up going back. They ended up fixing the whole garage for me. They ended up putting this old mattress on these cinder blocks for a place to sleep. And I ended up having a small fridge. It was a half fridge out there. I ended up having a TV radio, kind of like the one I had back in 1980, our family had in 1980. It had a radio TV on it. And they hung up a bunch of posters. I ain't going to say what the posters were. They were models, put it that way, nude models, if that tells you anything. Because they put all that stuff up, and either way, I liked it. It was a good setup. It was kind of nice. Just like I'd close the garage door at night. I'd sleep. Well, it was his grandma's house, my one buddy's grandma's house, and she didn't like the idea it was in there. So what ends up happening, I'm made to leave. So I thought, I don't know what to do now. So I ended up going to visit the first love of my life. Her name was Marcia. She lived in a place called Piqua, Ohio. And I thought to myself, I have nothing else to do. I have nowhere to go. So I took my last check I got from my commercial mowing job, and I took it and I got to end up getting a bus ticket. And I told, because I thought to myself, I haven't seen Marcia since 1985 when I met her. So I thought to myself, Chewy, stop it. Sorry, guys. Sorry. So I end up um, going to my brother's work and saying, hey, can I asked my brother's boss if she could take me to the bus station. So she takes me to the bus station on her lunch break. I wait all night at the bus station, all night at the bus station. And while I was there, I had a lot of my possessions and stuff. And I had a bunch of tapes. And I remember selling like a few of my tapes to get some extra money because I, ended up having to pay like $40, I believe, for a bus ticket to go to Piqua. That's where I was going to go. All I know, guys, is going to Piqua was kind of cool, and it was a good adventure, but it was kind of also foolish because I had nowhere to go. I would sit there and get these imaginations in my mind that somehow that you sit there and start letting your mind wander. And I started thinking to myself, I could see right now going to her house and her and her mom and dad saying, well, you're homeless, so if you want to stay in our garage, you can, and me and Marsha would rekindle our little romance. That didn't happen, of course, nonetheless, because your mind goes into crazy places. I mean, I should have known. It's like, come on, Eric. It's like, you haven't seen her for 4 years, like her parents are going to let you stay in her garage, But when you're that young, I was 18 at the time, you ain't thinking rationally. So, Chewy keeps doing this stuff. So I did go visit. I really wonder what was happening is when I told them who I was, they thought we barely even know who this guy is. We met him on vacation back in '85, you know. So a friend shows up, and then they ended up leaving together. She was dating a guy at the time. My friend or my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, was dating a guy at the time. So needless to say, they ended up, like saying, "Where do you want to go?" And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what to do. I said I was going to join the Marine Corps. And then they ended up dropping me off after they ended up calling a recruiter and telling him to meet me the next day. They ended up dropping me off at some National Guard unit. There's no one even there. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck do I do now? You really screwed up, Eric. I thought to myself. Chewy, stop it. Knock it off. 1 second, guys. You want out? He wants out, but he don't want out. So all I know is I'm thinking to myself, what do I do? So I started walking around. I didn't know. Finally, I go back to the first place that originally I got off after the bus, which was I went to the local YMCA. They ended up being a saving grace for me because they were good people. I would hang out there all day, go to their nursery hardly was ever used, so it had a TV in there. I would just sit in there and watch TV and go back and forth from there was like a small carryout. It was about maybe a block down. I would always go to get my food and stuff. And then I would do that. I played basketball because I was a member at the Y. And if you don't know anything about the YMCA, if you're a member at one YMCA, you can go to all YMCAs, all of them. So I done that. And at nighttime, it was crazy lonely. I mean, it was really crazy and lonely because I was 18, didn't know what to do, and the YMCA was closed. So I would just walk around all night, go to a Denny's or a Hardee's and hang out. I remember one time being at the one, and I kept falling asleep. They kept telling me, you can't sleep in here. You got to get up. You stay up or leave. So I kept trying to, I kept falling asleep. And finally they made me leave. They said, you have to leave. And at this time, my feet had blisters on them. I was, kind of in bad shape for being that age. I look back and now I think it wasn't that bad, but at the time it seemed horrible because my experiences as an 18-year-old weren't as crazy as they are now. I mean, you have a lot more to compare it to. So, oh boy, what was I going to say? Finally, the next day comes around and the recruiter comes to see me. Make a long story short, I joined the Marine Corps. But they couldn't let me in right away. They said, I went to the Met station. They looked for a place for me to stay in town. They couldn't find a place for me. They said, you have to find a place to stay or you have to get all this stuff healed up. But they won't let you go in the service unless you're pretty much in great condition and you don't have any, like I had a blister on my back and I had a blister on my legs and stuff like that, on my feet. So, I was thinking to myself, what do I do? Because I hung around Piqua long enough and they wouldn't let me hang out. So I end up, they said, do you have any family you can call? I could have called my family if I wanted to, but I just didn't want to. So I said no. And I finally called an aunt that I'm really get along with real well, talked to her for a while. I didn't have the guts to ask her if I could stay with her. I just felt awkward. I felt like I was imposing. So I ended up lying and saying, oh, yeah, I have a friend in Toledo said I could stay with him. And they, of course, they were skeptical. They thought, is this guy being honest? Does he really have a friend? I said, yeah, I can stay with him. So I go back up to Toledo. They give me a bus ticket back up to Toledo. And I remember the night that I got back, so it was late at night. I ended up seeing my brother at the very place that I had quit earlier in the summer, Super America. He was there getting pop and went up and started talking to him. He gave me a ride to my buddy's house. I went back there, not to the garage because I couldn't go back. I went back to their house and I did the same thing I'd done initially. I stayed in a shed overnight. So it started becoming this running joke that my house was the shed at Anderson's. Back then, I kind of got annoyed by it, but now I look back and I just laugh about it. So, guys, I'm gonna. Hey, how you doing, Aaron? I hope everyone is enjoying this. I know sometimes it's kind of long-winded, but I don't know if I can get through everything in two because it's 46 minutes now, almost 47 minutes. I think I'm going to end it here, guys, and we'll do a part 3. All right. I don't know how everyone's enjoying this. We don't got a big crowd here. I hope everyone takes something from it. But basically, it's thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're enjoying. I really do appreciate that. But I'm going to end it here for now, guys, and I will be back. You don't want me to stop? Boy, I didn't expect that. I'll go another couple minutes, but I do I got it. It's getting close to dinner time. But all I know is I ended up joining the Marine Corps. I got back to town. And I ended up staying in the shed. I ended up staying in the shed again, my home, away from home. So the next day, once again, I hung out at the mall. And then, of course, my friends started filing because they all hung out at the mall and yada, yada, yada. My one buddy said that you can probably stay with me, when we were at the mall. So we hung out at the mall the rest of the night. He said, just come back with me. I'll talk to my mom. So we ended up going back to his house, which was in Genoa, which is, I don't know, probably about 7 miles from my hometown. And he ended up going back there. He talked to his mom. She said, no, you can't stay here. Or she said, no, he can't stay here. He ends up sneaking me into the house anyways later that night. I go through the window, typical thing. So his mom, she finally realized that I was there, and she ended up relenting. She ended up being actually pretty nice and relenting and realized that I was not some kind of drug addict or whatever. And she let me go in there, which was weird. Eventually we get to the story about my friend Eric and me, because we were one of the 3 people in our group that would not do drugs. We simply would not do pot, any of that stuff. And what was I going to say? So I had to bide time for a couple of weeks so I could heal, so I could actually go in the Marines. So what ended up happening was my aunt, the one I called when I was at the recruiting station in Piqua, she knew since something was different, and she probably talked to my mom, say, yeah, your Eric called me. And then my mom probably told her, well, he's not with us right now. He's I don't know where he's at. So she probably put 2 and 2 together, realized I was probably calling to have a place to stay. So basically she ends up coming up to Toledo, and I was staying still with my buddy at the time. I stayed with him for about a week and a half. And my mom ended up calling the house and said, your aunt's going to be up there. She's going to actually come up to Genoa, to talk to you. They pretty much knew what I wanted to do. So I ended up going with my aunt to Walpaughnetta or Walpaug. Heathcliff. Huh, big boy's in here now. Heathcliff. Hi, kitty. Hi. Oh, Chewy ran him out. So they ended up, I remember the day they were all getting ready to leave. They didn't want me there alone. The one family, my one buddy, Eric, his family, they were all getting ready to leave. Eric was getting ready to leave for work. The mother was getting ready to go somewhere. So they didn't want me there by myself, which it's weird because I know there's once or twice I was there in their house by myself. Of course, I didn't do anything. All I did is watch MTV and maybe drink a pop or something. But either way, my aunt ends up showing up, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, I ended up going outside. I started walking around because they were kind of in the country, but they were close to a small town. I ended up walking all around, and finally, I ended up getting walked back to their house on this road. It was called Hellwig Road. It was a nice name for a road, Hellwig. And I ended up seeing a car that I could tell was going slow, and I thought, I bet that's my aunt. So I ended up kind of running, trying to yell, and then either way, she ends up coming back around, end up getting in her car. She knows that I need a place, so she takes me back to my old house, and I get some stuff, and I end up leaving, going to Wapak. I stayed with her, and the time I stayed with her was very, very interesting, exciting. My mom gave me like $20 to go when I left the house. She gave me $20. I remember staying with my aunt. It was fun because I'd stay up all night, watch VH1 or watch MTV, and I ended up getting all kinds of snacks for myself. I knew that when I went in the Marine Corps, snack time was over. You don't get to eat all kinds of goodies and stuff. So I'd stay up all night, watch. I still remember a lot of the videos and the music that was popular at the time. I remember Cherish by Madonna was popular, Talk It Over by Grace and Hugh, Sowing the Seeds of Love, Tears for Fears. Roadhouse would have been big at the time, so they were playing Angel Eyes by Jeff Healey. And I mean, it was a really good time to be alive. I mean, it just really was. Even though my life was kind of topsy turvy, I still didn't mind it. I enjoyed it. What was I going to say, guys? I'm going to leave off here now, right? And we're going to pick it up when I actually go in the Marine Corps. We're going to pick it up then, all right? So thanks for listening. I might come back on later tonight. So look for me. Always look for me, guys. You never know when I'm going to be on. Look for me. And then either I'll be on tonight or tomorrow night, one of the two, all right? So love you guys all. Continue to just get the word out about my channel. Let people know about it. And I will see you guys either later tonight or tomorrow, all right? So be looking for me. God bless you. Love you.